I just have two questions, one related to global security and the other economic. Prime Minister Modi just concluded a two-day visit in Tehran. I think he met with President Rouhani. My information says they signed 12 agreements, talking anything from trade to security. You've related some comments to relationship with Iran and its growing import to India. I'd like you to talk about that in perspective with Pakistan and the relationship that India has with Pakistan, two nuclear powers, an aspiring nuclear power in Iran. And can you talk, how do you assess the developments of this growing India-Iran relationship, and how does it affect U.S. interest in the region?
Thank you, Senator. We have, over the course of years, invested a great deal of effort in engaging India on our desire to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons and the sanctions regime that has been in place for that reason. The Indians have been very consistent partners, even when it has adversely impacted their economic interest, in ensuring that they were working with us and in compliance of that sanctions regime.
I'm sorry, but some of these 12 agreements that they just signed have to do with increased trade between the two countries, correct?
So we are at the point now under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action where some activities that were previously prohibited are in fact permissible. We don't have yet the details of the agreements that have been signed, and we will look to engage with our Indian counterparts to better understand the specific details and how they comport with what continuing requirements are in place and what restrictions are in place.
With India having the world's third largest, and I know this is a debatable measure, third largest military, and the relationship with Iran having been somewhat tenuous over the last few decades, seems to be better today. But with the diversity, religious diversity, demographic diversity, the Pashtun issue across both countries, give us an update on the India-Pakistan security issues today.
Well, clearly we have long encouraged India and Pakistan to engage in dialogues and to address some of the many issues that continue to be outstanding in that relationship. We have a very important relationship with each country, and we seek to advance our interests with each country. We don't see this as zero-sum, but we do recognize that for India and Pakistan, that there are a number of outstanding issues between both that would be benefited by dialogue. On the other hand, we do understand that countering and combating terrorism is an important objective, not just for India, for Pakistan, for Afghanistan, but for the United States across that area. And so these are areas that we try to support conversations across all of our bilateral relationships, as well as pushing countries in the region to address it themselves. We do believe that increasingly there is recognition that no kind of terrorist organization will be acceptable, that you can't differentiate between good terrorists and bad terrorists. That has been a stalwart tenet of our engagement in the region, and we do believe that we are starting to get that recognition back in at least the commitments that countries in the region are making to us. We do need to see more in terms of actions in that space, and we'll continue to push on those issues.
Thank you. Moving over to the economic question, India is a growing economy, one of the fastest growing. It's the third largest, I think, now, in line with having the third largest military. And yet the bilateral trade is really anemic between the U.S. and India. We still have a net negative trade balance with them. And yet they're a large source of foreign direct investment in the U.S., one of the fastest growing, I might add. The question is the World Bank ranks, and I am a little bit dubious of these rankings, but the World Bank ranks India 130th out of 189 countries that they rank in terms of ease of do business. I can relate to that in some ways. I've done business there much of my career. having lived in Asia a couple times. So the question I have is, and by the way, I'm not sure that the U.S. ranking of 7 on that World Bank ranking is merited either. I know how tough it is to do business in the U.S. today. So having said that, what's the administration doing to increase trade between the two countries and influence the economic development of that region, related to several things, the refugee issue being one, where we have to get those economies growing again when these people get to go home, and not just in Syria, but all across the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, et cetera, including Africa. So can you talk specifically about, this is one of the 3 top economies in the world, and yet trading with the top economy in the world is really anemic, and yet we have the economic development needs of the third world, and I don't see India playing in that today. And I want to see, the question I have is, how can these 2 juggernauts economically get together and trade better together, but also work together for the economic development of the third world?
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent question, and it's been an effort that has been one of both the most important, but also most complex between our 2 countries. The Indian economy, which has for so long been very inward and insular, is increasingly looking to see how it can integrate and connect. And as they do that, I think that the Indian government is recognizing its need to open up and liberalize. It is not happening at a pace that any of us would want. I think that the Prime Minister created very high expectations in his campaign about what an India that is open for business would look like. In terms of the reforms that he has been able to get passed through Parliament and implemented, the pace has been slower than what many, not only in the United States, but frankly in India, would have liked to see. That said, we do believe that there has been greater ease in doing business and in attracting investment. We have seen that in terms of the increase in U.S. investment flows into India. We have also seen that in terms of the interest of American companies. They increasingly are looking at India as one of their top destinations for where they want to put their investments, where they want to sell their products and their services. And so it will be incumbent upon both of us to try to create the economic architecture that allows that to happen, and for India to create the environment, both with respect to larger legislative changes that they need to make in terms of the tax regime and others, but also in terms of the regulatory policies and how they are implemented across the board.
Right. Thank you.